You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What is up, soccer fans, and welcome to another episode of Soccer Talks with me, Aly Trost Martin, brought to you by our friends at Emprise Bank. You can open an account with Emprise Bank in less than 5 minutes. The savings just start there, though. Emprise is a trusted partner with a variety of products and services to help you achieve your goals, so do not be tethered to a brick building. Start a meaningful relationship with a bank that has your best in mind. That is Emprise Bank. And now, so excited to introduce our guest on today's show. He is an MLS insider, has all of the scoops. Tommy Scoops is what we call him. If you are in the weeds on everything going on in Major League Soccer, even if you're not, you've probably seen his name pop up on your Twitter timeline. He is Tom Bogert, MLSsoccer.com, and he is joining me today on the show to talk all things World Cup, US men's national team, MLS, and so much more. We get into mustaches and some other fun topics. So please welcome Tom Bogert to the Soccer Talks podcast. Welcome back to the Soccer Talks podcast, episode number 3. So we are going big. Tom Bogert, MLS insider, enjoying the World Cup, enjoying the MLS offseason, which is probably still a busy time for him while the rest of us kind of relax and get ready for the year ahead. So, Tom, how's it been going balancing both World Cup and MLS offseason moves? We have some big ones that we'll talk about.
Hey, Aly, thanks for having me as always. Yeah, enjoying is an interesting way to describe it. It's definitely been very busy, and yeah, I am still stuck into all the offseason news, the normal reporting. It's been fun for some people on Twitter joking around, like, hey man, like, the World Cup's on. Like I was talking about like the re-entry draft like a couple minutes before Mexico played Poland and what amounted to almost a must win. And I was like, yeah, like I know that this is for 2% of people, not the rest of you, but I'm stuck here. What do you want me to do?
You know what? Twitter you can't please everybody. If there's one thing I've learned, it's like you can never be appropriate with the timing of anything that you say or do because someone is right there to jump down your throat. Yep. And I know that you know that just as well as anyone. But while you have been balancing all of the MLS news and notes and things like that, you have been enjoying the World Cup. We all have. It's been hard not to. I think it's been a fun one, even though now we're about a week removed. We're recording this on a Wednesday from the United States being eliminated, a loss to the Netherlands. Now that we've kind of had some time to process what this World Cup has meant for USMNT, if you take a 30,000 foot view, what is your assessment of the 2022 World Cup for the United States and what it means in the grand scheme of things, given, the fact that they missed out on the last World Cup and they're going to be here in 2026?
Yeah, so obviously the last World Cup was an outlier. That just making the World Cup shouldn't be the expectation. It should be progressing. Getting to the knockout rounds, I thought was just about meeting expectations. There were some good performances. There were some lackluster parts of it. Nothing was perfect, but nothing was, totally imperfect. So it's weird, I think, how nuanced that I'm coming away from it with, because look, like defensively they were really good. There was a lot to like. People were talking about rotation and that's to blame as to why they lost to the Netherlands. I don't know how much I buy it, because I think that people would have jumped down the coaching staff's throat if they rested some, like if Tyler Adams didn't play against England or something like that. And like that England game was a really good performance. The Wales first half was really good. The Wales second half was a little disappointing. And I'm not sure how much it comes down to, what is systemic or what is structural versus what was okay. Like maybe Aronson didn't make right run, or maybe Sargent didn't have the right finish. Or you know what I mean? Whether it's individual plays or how much it came down to structure. I thought the structure was good. I thought that the Netherlands very deservedly won. I think that the overarching feeling is going to be the recency end of the knockout game, that a little disappointing in that it never felt close. It never felt close. Even after the Dutch scored that first goal, it was still a 1-goal game, but it didn't feel close. And then 2-0 after halftime. And then there was 90 seconds of hope, 90 seconds of, okay, here we go. 12 minutes left. They're going to kind of push, and this will be fun, whether they win or lose. And 90 seconds after Haji Wright scores with a bad touch, they concede again. And the goals all seem kind of avoidable, just in, tracking runners and being a little bit better at the back post. So It's a lot of words to say. Like, I thought that it was fine. Like, I wasn't an A+, it wasn't a failure. I thought B-, B, maybe a little bit better. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think going into this, just the fact that, exhale, they qualified, get out of the group stage. And I think everybody would have been very happy regardless of what happened in the round of 16. That's kind of how I walked away from it. And like you said, it didn't ever really feel close. I like your note on, maybe it being less a structural collapse and more so just like poor individual moments that maybe showed us a little bit of, hey, this team still has a lot yet individually and collectively to kind of put together in order to really compete with a team like the Netherlands, who I thought was just a better team that entire game for the most part. I didn't think that the U.S., in my opinion, watching the game back and reading, a lot of different analysis on it, it never felt like watching it. If they came back, it would have been almost like, a lot of good luck would have had to happen for the U.S.
Yeah, and look, like the difference I think that I get caught in arguing with people about, talent versus potential, and you go back through the whole World Cup qualifying process and selecting groups, and oh my God, why is this player here? It should be that player who plays for the second team in Spain or whatever it is. Like, like this group has a ton of potential. It also has plenty of talent, but like a lot of times I think we get confused in setting these expectations with like, the core is 20 to 23 or 19 to 23 until Musa turned 20 years old. And obviously Gio Reyna was, physically unable or whatever, everything was going on there with that kind of cloud around the team. That like, this is early prime. Like, these aren't players that are often supposed to carry your group. These aren't players that are supposed to be the consistent. You're not supposed to have a 23-year-old captain. Like, Tyler Adams is exceptional, and he's going to be in his prime when the 2026 World Cup. Same thing with Pulisic. Same thing with Weston McKennie. Same thing with Tim Weah. You go down the line. So on one hand, like, yeah, like there is a lot of talent, but on the other hand, like a lot of what we're looking at is potential. Like, Tim Weah has like a season and a half of being like fully fit. Like, Christian Pulisic, how often has he been, like, did he have one season as a regular starter for Chelsea? Gio Reyna hasn't really put together a full season because of injuries. Like, you kind of go down the line and it's like, oh yeah, like this group has a chance and has a chance to do something special, but like maybe 2022 wasn't the year. And that's not to like lower all the expectations or excuse it and be like, oh, well, like they tried their best. Like, there are reasons to criticize. There are reasons to hope. Like, again, some of those individual mistakes, just because a player is young or just because it's an older player who, you don't look at as like, say the Walker Zimmerman penalty, like you go, oh man, like hopefully in 2026, Chris Richards will be playing for a mid-table or a top like Premier League team or a German team. Like, that doesn't excuse the mistake by Walker Zimmerman, right? So like, I don't know. It doesn't make for great podcast, doesn't make for great, content, but like, it all feels kind of just about right to me.
Yeah, no, I think I couldn't agree more. And that kind of brings me to my next question now, with all the potential that this team does have and the fact that a lot of these guys are going to be in their prime come 2026, does there need to be a change at the top? The USSF is currently in talks with manager Greg Berhalter about his next contract, what that's going to look like. Do you think he is the guy that take this team and unlock some of that potential that a lot of these guys have? Or have we kind of hit the ceiling and Berhalter out? We need some fresh eyes, some fresh kind of approach and tactics in the building.
I see both sides for sure. Like, I'll start off with that. I think that he's been wildly like over criticized. Again, he's not perfect, but he did a lot of things right. And they've done a lot of things in terms of development, recruitment. Tactics can be frustrating sometimes, but you look back at the group stage, they were the only team to not concede during the run of play. Like, there was a lot of things that I think were right. And look, it's the old joke of, I believe it was Yogi Löw who said this, like about Germany when he was the German national team manager. He's like, yeah, we have a country of 10 million national team managers every time we play, right? So like, I understand that there's always going to be criticism and stuff, but I thought that he did well. Like, getting to the World Cup, getting to the knockout round, winning the Gold Cup, all these other things that they did, I think were positives. I also understand the idea that, okay, like that can be true. And also maybe it's time to go in a different direction. A lot of this is tough because you can't, there are always talks. There's intermediaries. There are ways around it. But like, out of respect, you can't really gauge, all right, who would the next person be? But like, I'm never a fan of change just for the sake of change. Like, I'm not entirely sure who's out there or who might be interested, who might not be interested. So I think that their contracts end at the end of December. And like, it's important to point out that Jeff Carlisle of ESPN reported that they're just, preliminary talks or whatever. Berhalter might have his own ambitions. Like, there has been, I had heard for over however many months, leading up to the World Cup that, he's content with the contract ending when it does, because maybe he'll go and look for a European club job. So, it depends on what both parties want, what both parties kind of view this project as. I'm not firmly in either camp. Like, this is one of them. Again, I'm not coming in here very strong, but this is one that, I think he's a fine option. I think that maybe there are better options out there, but I don't think you just make a change for the sake of making a change.
100%. Speaking of rumblings that you've heard of, is there anyone, whether that you've heard of, that might be interested, or maybe just in your own opinion, someone that you think has the credentials and could be fit for what this job requires?
I would love Jim Curtin to get a chance, but again, like, how dissimilar, I guess, from Greg Berhalter, and like Jim has a really strong resume in MLS. That Berhalter did too before he took over. So I don't know if that appeases everybody, or if they wanted to actually go in a really different direction. I'd love the idea of Jesse Marsch as well. I understand that maybe there are thoughts that maybe his game wouldn't adapt to the international stage very well. And I just don't think that we're giving enough credit to these guys in that they can tweak what they do, tweak the system, tweak whatever it is that they need to adapt. I think that they're very adaptable. Particularly Jesse, like, just look at his career and where he's adapted, what he's done to get to Leeds to where he is. So I don't know if he would leave Leeds for this. Like, there was a point where this wouldn't be a discussion because it looks like he was about to get fired about a month and a half ago. But as of right now, he's in the job. They're doing better. And like, I don't know what the pull is versus being a Premier League manager or being the national team manager. So I would love imagine like an all-star staff of Jesse Marsch and Jim Curtin, kind of, as Jim with the most overqualified assistant like ever. Like, I don't like that would kind of be like a dream. Like, again, I have no idea what Jesse wants, what the situation with Leeds is. These would be the couple that come off the top of my head. There people have been floating around other options of these big name managers that are either out of contract or whatever. Like, Zidane was floated out. It's like, I don't think that's realistic, right? Like, there's just so there are options out there, but again, if the most realistic that I could think of, I think, would be like Jesse Marsch, and again, I don't even know if that's realistic.
Yeah, Leeds America, baby, let's go. that would be my ideal pick if a change were to be made. And like you said, it's hard to know what each individual is really looking for when it comes to their ideal job, because at the end of the day, it's a job for them. So hard to remember that sometimes.
I will say that there is still a whole lot of pull for the U.S. national team job. This is the most high profile, I guess, job to the casual or just the average American fan. Like this, more people I think know who Greg Berhalter is than Jesse Marsch, because he's the national team manager, versus like in Jesse Marsch is his trailblazer and doing just incredible things at Leeds and in Europe. But I think that this job really does have pull.
So that said, kind of in that same vein, what do you think that this World Cup did? I mean, there were some incredible numbers for viewership here in the States, despite a little fumble early on from SportsCenter social media, trying to piece together the most random, probably not even all that good team of soccer players in other sports. Despite that, it feels like we started to go in a positive direction after that. I know, being here in Kansas City, just like the number of fans showing up, especially young fans, that's what really impressed me. I think World Cup watch parties of 10,000 people probably appeal to a younger audience anyway, but regardless, I was still really impressed just by the sheer number of young, college age and even younger fans that showed up of all ages to this thing. What do you think that this World Cup did in helping build that momentum and make soccer cool? Because I think that's kind of just what we need.
Yeah, look, there's nothing bigger in soccer in this country than the World Cup. There are a ton of just normal soccer fans here that will be watching World Cups, Champions League, whatever their league of choice is. But there is a whole host of cats, people who watch the Olympics and stuff like that, right? Or people who aren't NFL fans that watch the Super Bowl. It is a prestige event. It's the biggest soccer event. So it's always fun to see that kind of latch on. And I don't think that it's realistic to expect all of these people to continue to be soccer fans. Or, okay, 10,000 people went, Sporting Kansas City is going to have 9,000 people asking for season tickets more than usual next season. Like, I don't think that that's realistic, but every time that these events happen and people that have open minds that maybe have, the younger age is a perfect way to put it, because you're not totally set in your ways. You're not totally set in how you always spend your time, and you're open to more things. And hey, this soccer thing was cool. Maybe I'll check out a game. So like, I think it's more incremental than huge, but again, it continues to build. These numbers always get bigger. And as we're getting to the 2026 World Cup, like, that's kind of the one that you can really use as a launching pad to make it more formative in adding legitimate fans and legitimate supporters who kind of care about all this, rather than, again, you're just always going to have casuals who come in every 4 years for the World Cup because it's the biggest event in the world. It's a party, all that stuff. And like, that's all great. And it's cool that even the World Cup resonates here on that level. And then it's about, I guess, keeping a number of those people in at the party for, MLS, Premier League, regular national team games outside of the World Cup and everything else.
And MLS, obviously one of the biggest ones, hoping to be the beneficiary in all of this. And 2023 is set to be a year full of a lot of change in Major League Soccer. You've got Apple TV, the new broadcast rights deal kicking off next year. You've got the addition of the Leagues Cup. Teams are going to be playing upwards of 50 games between Open Cup, Leagues Cup, regular season play, playoff soccer as well. And then a lot of talk that's kind of quieted down, but was definitely going on about another change to the MLS Cup playoff format, which would be very interesting. Don't get me started. I am personally a fan of going back to the aggregate 2-leg. Yeah. I think that's the best way. If the big concern is, hey, we need more time, it goes by too quick, we need to drum up some of these storylines. To me, that's the best way to, one, still keep it competitive and have a lot at stake while being able to really build up these teams, build up these players and get that interest going. The only negative would be that for the average American sports fan that you want to tune in, they don't really understand, wait, that doesn't make sense. It's not one and done. Why am I watching this game? What say you about just the state of 2023 MLS and opinions on all of the changes? And you said you weren't a fan of some of that playoff change talk.
No, I hope it stays as is. I understand the aggregate format, but I really do like the single elimination knockout. I think that it's a lot of fun. And I think that, this year it was cool to see the top team in each conference. I love that. I just don't want to devalue the regular season anymore. That's why I didn't like the idea that was floated out of potential talks of a group stage type of playoffs, because then why would the average person care about an MLS game in June, right? So again, I understand.
There's already kind of a problem with the fact that you could literally be a below 500 team going into late July, and Sporting Kansas City this last year were probably just 2 wins away from making the playoffs after sitting at the bottom of the Western Conference for majority of the season.
Yeah, and again, but part of that is going again, but they didn't even turn it over to get over the playoff line. Toronto didn't either. When everybody said, "Oh, who cares if they're losing in the first half? Here comes Insigne, he's going to solve everything." So I do think that the regular season is mattering enough. It's a little bit more than it used to be, particularly with people caring about the supporter shield and whatnot. So again, I do like the home field advantage single knockout stuff. In terms of this year, I'm super excited. Look, I'm very curious to see how exactly the Leagues Cup goes. I'm optimistic and bullish on it because I think that anytime that Liga MX and MLS can have competitions and play against each other in meaningful ways, that's really great. I understand the concerns about stopping the season for a month, but there's going to be all of these games. And look, as long as the players aren't getting overworked, which, again, for a team like Philadelphia is in the CONCACAF Champions League as well. So they have MLS regular season, expecting to be in the postseason, CCL, which is at least 2 games. You'd imagine that if they get to the semifinals, that's 6 games. Leagues Cup, depends on how far they go. That's another, 3 to 5 or 6 games, playoffs, all that. And then before you know it, like you were pointing out, that's 50 plus games right there. That's a lot in this time frame. So as long as they don't overdo it on the midweek games to try to make the calendar work, I'm all for it.
Have you gotten the sense in any teams that you've been talking to that the way in which they're going to go about roster construction this offseason is a little bit different, given that there are going to be more games? How are teams kind of approaching this now with all that's to come?
Yeah, I mean, depth is always a big concern, and it's always difficult in a salary cap league and every all the constraints that come with MLS versus elsewhere in the world, because players don't want to be backups. They don't want to play 5 to 8 games a season. So it's a constant battle of improving and keeping depth. But talking to Philadelphia Union just traded for Andres Pereira from Orlando City, and I was talking to people at the club. I was like, look, I just want to be, like, this doesn't mean anything about like Jose Martinez or Leon Flock or one of your starters getting sold, right? And they're like, because I'm like, you have at least 5 starter quality players for 4 spots and then 2 really exciting young players. Like, that, is there one too many? And they're like, we're going to play 55 games this year. Like, we need all of these players. Like, I like this. So I have gotten that sense from teams that, like, they are really not concerned, but really trying to be forthright about ensuring that there's depth and that they don't get to a situation during the year where a couple injuries just spirals your season out of control. And like what happened with SKC last year, that's 2 DPs. It's really difficult to overcome that for anybody, regardless. So like, as long as it's not like something cataclysmic like that, then like, again, teams are very, very cognizant of building depth.
Speaking of Sporting Kansas City, they recently just retained Graham Zusi, Roger Espinoza, Andreu Fontas, but in all the reporting, it's very clear that, you know, they're definitely going to go out and make some moves even after finding the success they did at the end of last year, bringing in Eric Tommy in the midfield and then Willie Agata up top. Right center back seems to be a spot that Sporting Kansas City could certainly use a very high caliber player. Where else would you look for this Sporting KC team to get better? And where do you kind of rank them right now going into 2023, knowing that the rankings are always going to rile up the fans and are always so hard to do?
I don't know. I don't have a power ranking list off the top of my head, but center back is definitely big, and it depends on what Andreu Fontas looks like. He dipped really hard last year after a 2021 season that I think I had him as a finalist for Defender of the Year. If not, like I viewed him as one of the best defenders in the league that year. And last year, it wasn't quite that. So they really need to hit on that other center back. They maybe could use another one. Just again, we're talking about depth. The big one that last year that sunk them for me was they didn't have a good plan at defensive midfield. It was Uri Rosell, who hadn't played at 1,800 minutes in a season since like 2014 or something, right? And it was Jose Marie, who he was cut after 20 minutes on the first game. So like that wasn't a great plan. So it depends on if they see Remy Voltaire as that 100%, you're going to be our starter there and Uri Rosell is going to be the backup, or if they want to bring in another number 6 and say, okay, Remy can play there, but also he can play as an 8. Like we can kind of juggle the lineup. So outside of the central defense, you hit it. Like that's the first concern. And they really need to get not just a good starter, but like an above average starter, because that'll help a lot. But the second spot, again, would be defensive midfield.
Okay, a couple more, because we went to Twitter to get some questions for you, Tom Bogert. And my favorite one was, if you could force any MLS player to grow a mustache of your caliber. For anybody watching this podcast, Tom Bogert is famously known for that stash. Who would you go to grow one of those bad boys?
I default on this one usually to John Tolkien, just because a fellow New Jersey kid. I the mullet and all that stuff. I think he just looked absolutely electric with that mustache on the mullet. But then there's always kind of like a more conservative option, like I don't know, a guy like Julian Gressel. Like he has a podcast and he's got a brilliant personality, and I'm not sure how many people knew that about him before he had the podcast. So I think it'd be funny if Julian did too. A really, really nice haircut, clean shaven, everything styled right, but then he just had like a bushy mustache in there.
Okay, one of the big signings this offseason, Portland Timbers signing Evander, Brazilian attacking midfielder. Your thoughts on that move by Portland? Certainly not a depth move that they made.
Yeah, they knew they had clarity from early summer that their plan this offseason was to bring in a designated player number 10, and a significant addition at that. You don't always set out to, club record signing, but they knew from the beginning of this that like, hey, if the right target is for this price, like we'll make the funds and we'll get it done. I was talking to people about this, like kind of after the signing was announced, that I was like, I'm sure that you identified that he was a good player the same way that a lot of teams can identify that Messi is a good player, or, Ricky Puig is a good player before he went to the Galaxy, right? So I was like, he's leading the Europa League in assists. He's 24 years old. He's linked with Galatasaray, teams in England, Rangers, whatever, in like a couple rounds. I was like, where was part of you like, yeah, this is a really low probability move. Like, what are the chances that we convince a 24-year-old Brazilian to leave the Europa League and go to MLS rather than say, a mid-table Premier League team or a mid-table German team? They're like, yeah, like, honestly, we weren't like pessimistic, but like well, why not try or why not kind of talk? And then it was clear after, speaking with him, and he believed in our project, and like we believed he had the right motivations, all that stuff, that it's like, oh wow, like this is a realistic possibility. And they were able to get it over the line. They credited FC Michelin, who are, well versed in selling players. They're known for getting young players and moving them on across Europe. So this is something that they're used to. And it was just kind of a really interesting profile. Really reminds you of the Cucho Hernandez signing that Columbus made. Like, we're going to see more and more of this in MLS. Like, people are going to leave, teams that aren't in top 5 leagues or like the fringes of the top 5 leagues and come to MLS and then hope in a couple years that, like Miguel Marón went to Newcastle, that's going to work for them. And it's just a really exciting new pathway.
Yeah, and very exciting for MLS as well. Definitely going to only keep rising the level of competition here in our league domestically. But my last question for you, Tom, the path to becoming an MLS insider. You did this, I feel really during the pandemic is when you started to kind of hit that upwards trajectory. I can say it, you're pretty young. Like, how did you get into this whole thing?
Yeah, winding road. I mean, I knew that I wanted to do sports journalism. I figured out at some point early in high school that, hey, maybe I'm not going to become a professional soccer player at 5'7" and not exactly very fast, but with a great touch.
We all had that moment in our life, by the way.
So I liked English and history, and so rather than like math and science, and I stumbled into like a journalism class in high school. I was like, wait a minute, you can just write and talk about sports like for a living. Like, I love that idea. So that kind of helped shape me on that path. And I played collegiate soccer at a school in New Jersey, just outside of New York City, which helped a lot with kind of internships. And then so, one thing leads to another. And then like I'm freelance writing, and I luckily get brought into MLS, and then just, kind of built from there. And again, it was a confluence of hard work and a lot of good luck.
Save those phone numbers. All right, Tom, thank you so much for the time. Where can everybody follow along, as you will be, I'm sure, doing what you do best, tweeting out all of the updates, the news. We didn't even get to hit on a lot of it, but just go through his Twitter timeline if you're trying to stay up to date on everything going on in MLS this offseason. Yeah,
just add Tom Bogert on Twitter. And I unfortunately am terminally online, so you'll see me on Twitter.
The worst part of this job, hands down. But Tom, thank you so much for the time. We'll talk to you again soon.
Always got time for you, of course.